majority is just not in following the Constitution, and that I've been concerned about being obvious about it. So there are 7 members on the Supreme Court, 3 are conservative, 4 are liberal. Protasewicz is the newest liberal. She just began her term August 1st. It'd be one thing if they were liberal politically or judicially. I can live with that, disagree with it, but I can live with it if they follow the Constitution. This little majority is just violated the Constitution. They violated the state Constitution 3 times the first 3 days they took power. We can go over that just briefly. I went in detail last time we met, so I'm not going to repeat all that, but it's just brazen violation of the state Constitution. I don't have quick answers for you. I don't know what we do about it. I get a lot of questions about impeachment. I'll talk about that. I'm not advocating impeachment. I'm not advocating against impeachment, but I'm happy to talk about it. I want to be just a person who presents information about what's going on, what the options are under the law, and let the people decide what they want to do with that. So, yes, I was a judge in Jefferson County for 18 years, next door. I was chief judge for the surrounding area, including Waukesha, for 5 of those years. And then 6 years ago, I went to the state Supreme Court to be the director of state courts, which is the chief, like, administrator of the court system, so not judicial, but you run the court system. And you work directly for the chief justice in the Supreme Court. And you work at the pleasure of the courts. You really need 4 votes to keep your job. So when Protasewicz took over August 1st, actually before that, July 31st, I got a call. I was in a hotel in New York at a conference with the chief justice and my wife and some others. And Justice Carrasco, a liberal, says, Randy, we're going to fire you tomorrow, August 1st. We thought maybe you'd want to resign today. And I said, no, I'm not going to resign. You're basically going to have to fire me. But have I done something wrong? Have I done something incompetent? I'd like to know if I did. She said, no, we're just going to go in a different direction. And so the next day, the 4 of them voted to fire me. And that was the first violation of the Constitution, based on Article 7 of the Wisconsin Constitution, such as a court of 7 justices. And all 7 have the right to be at the table when these matters are discussed and voted on. If you're in the minority, you're going to lose the vote, but you have the right to be there. It's like in the Assembly or the Senate. They don't exclude the minority party from the public meeting. They're invited to speak, and they vote, and it goes the way it goes. So could they have legally fired me 30 days later at a scheduled meeting where all 7 justices were there? Yes. People say, why don't you sue to get your job back? First of all, I don't really want to work there anymore, and I worked as a manager of honor. That was their first target. They took over day 1, get rid of Koschnick. So for me, that's a badge of honor. But even a more serious violation occurred the next day. They appointed my replacement, a judge from Milwaukee. The state constitution, Article 7, Section 10, says if you're a judge in Wisconsin, you can't serve any other government position while you're serving your term of office. They don't want judges shopping for better government jobs. And the Supreme Court violated that by appointing her to this director of state court position while she's a sitting judge. So when I was a judge in the job 6 years ago, I finished my term first. Because I read the Constitution, and I comply with the Constitution. So I finished my term July 31st of 17 and began August 1st. So I called members of the leadership in the Assembly and the State Senate, and they agreed. They sent a letter to the court saying, we're concerned as a legislature because we pay, salaries, we create these positions, and your appointment of the sitting judge in this non-judicial position violates Article 7, Section 10 of the Constitution. No response from the court. And then the 3rd day, the 4 of them get together without the appointment of 3 justices and strip effectively the chief justice of all of her administrative authority, which is also in the state constitution. The chief justice in the state constitution is the head of the entire state court system. That's always been respected. Even when there was a liberal chief justice and we had a conservative majority of justices, they still respected the chief justice's position because she was there lawfully and she's the chief. She gets 1 vote, but she still gets to run the meetings, set the agendas, and make sure everybody is heard. So those are the first, 3 days of their being in power. They flagrantly violated the Constitution. I had filed complaints with the Wisconsin Judicial Commission against the 4 justices, laying out what they did to violate the Constitution. We'll see what happens. The problem the Judicial Commission has 5 members appointed by the Supreme Court and 6 appointed by the governor. So that may not go so well. Also, and by the way, the way that they took away the power of the Chief Justice, they created an administrative committee that reviews all the Chief Justice's decisions. There are 3 justices on the committee. The Chief, Annette Ziegler, who is a conservative, constitutionalist, and then 2 liberals, and they're going to vote on every decision that she makes. So that's just it's a sham. It's not authorized by the Constitution. And I had called party leadership for the Senate and the Assembly, and I'm not going to judge them in a very difficult position, but I asked them to please consider impeachment or perhaps filing a lawsuit that could maybe end up in federal court to try to at least bring to the attention of the public what's going on here. Some people think, well, it's just politics, elections have consequences, that's the way it goes. This is not elections have consequences, unless you consider tyranny to be an exceptional outcome of an election. The party hasn't done that yet. I've been trying to contact people who have money who are conservative who could fund a major lawsuit. And I'm not going to pass a hat and ask for $10. I need somebody with like $100,000 to hire a law firm to really come in and take the people to federal courts. I'm not asking for money. Our side hasn't come up with anything. The Democrat Party contributed almost $10 million directly to Protasiewicz's campaign. Not even third-party groups, just state Democrat Party, Justin Protasiewicz's, $10 million, here you go. And now this big case is pending as the redistricting lawsuit, where the court's going to rewrite all the maps in Wisconsin to give Democrats a huge benefit. And so this is another possible basis for impeachment, which I think that the leadership is considering, is that judges are allowed to sit on cases when they take contributions from people because you allow them to support you. But there's a line, and $10 million is a lot of money. The U.S. Supreme Court, in a case called Caperton about 15 years ago, got involved in a state Supreme Court case. Normally federal courts don't get involved in state court issues, but in that case, a party to a lawsuit spent $3 million to get a Supreme Court justice elected. And the U.S. Supreme Court actually stepped in that case. It's a violation of due process. If somebody gives $3 million to support a candidate and they have a case pending, that is illegal. They reversed the case, took the judge off the case. And so that was $3 million. We've got $10 million. So I think we may have an angle here to get to the federal court on this Caperton issue. And if your neighbors say, well, I read in the paper Republicans took money the conservative justices took money from the Republican Party as well. They did, but it was like $75,000 or maybe $150,000, so they took money. But the Supreme Court of the United States said the limit is $3 million. $3 million is clearly too much, so there's always a matter of degree. And when I was a judge, I would get donations from the DA and the defense lawyer, and I get hopefully support from the legal community, but not so much they would just overpower any appearance of fairness. So $10 million is a huge number, and I'm hoping that there will be either a lawsuit filed or that the Assembly will consider impeachment. So let's talk about impeachment. There's at least three ways to address corruption. Of those 4, one's election. But the problem is justices serve 10-year terms. The next Supreme Court election is in 2025. Ann Walsh Bradley is up. Please make sure she's defeated. That's April of 25. She's one of the 4. Recall is an option under the Constitution, but you have to be in office a year to be recalled. That takes a lot of money and organization. That will not apply to Protasiewicz's, which has only been in since August 1st. You have something called address, which is similar to impeachment, but it's got different standards for address. You need 2/3 of the Assembly and 2/3 of the Senate to remove a person from office. The Republicans, and this is a Republican versus Democrat issue. All the Democrats lining behind the liberal justices, as far as I know, and all the Republicans hopefully lining behind the conservative justices, so address probably won't work. The one that gets the most coverage lately is impeachment. State Constitution, Article 7, Section 1 says to impeach, it has to be on the basis of corruption or crimes or misdemeanors. You need a majority of the Assembly to file the impeachment articles, which we clearly have in the Assembly. That could be done if the Assembly leadership had the wherewithal, had the choice, had the balls to do it. All right. And then the state constitution says that justice or the judge who's impeached is not allowed to sit on any cases until they're acquitted by the Senate. So by simply filing articles of impeachment, the justice is removed from any cases that are pending, and that would include this redistricting case, presumably if it happens soon, and other cases until there's a trial in the Senate. The Senate is the court under the state constitution. They try the case with the judge and the jury, essentially. Something else your liberal neighbors might say, well, it's not corruption. Corruption means bribery. Well, corruption certainly includes bribery, but it's not limited to bribery. And because the Senate is the court, the Senate decides, as a political matter, what the definition of corruption is. And in my opinion, violating your oath to uphold the state constitution at least 3 times in 3 days is corruption. So there's no question that the legislature could pursue impeachment if they wanted to. That's an option. Hopefully there's a lawsuit that will be filed that may go in front of the court on the Caperton issue. I think there's grounds for that. So I'm really here to just educate you, give you a warning, here's what's going on, make sure you're involved in the Supreme Court race in 2025 to remove Ann Walsh Bradley. Somebody wanted me to run, I'm not running, but it's giving up a great model. She fired him, now let's fire her. So I thought about it. So I have these 8 questions. Yes, sir.
Is there any way for district attorney to file a charge against
I think asking if you can file charges against the justices. I did. I mean, I filed complaints to the Judicial Commission. That's the only place you can.
DA's filed criminal charges. Is there anything in any law about that?
Well, there's a possibility. I have to be careful about accusing people of criminal behavior, but there is a felony called misconduct in public office. It applies to all government officials and employees, actually. And it includes taking an act in your official capacity that you know you're not authorized to do under law. So I think that them appointing this judge to this position and the judge taking the position is clearly not authorized by the law. The problem is that the case is up in front of them at the end of the day. And that's why when I talk to law firms, are like, look, we're going to lose, we're going to there anyways. We've got other clients that wants to represent them on their cases, and they're like paying customers. If we tick off the majority of the court, we're going to lose our private business, which I get, and they're going to lose anyway. So we're really sort of in a conundrum. So yes, the DA could file a criminal charge, or the Attorney General could file a criminal charge if they were satisfied that misconduct in public office had occurred. Not likely to happen. Any other questions? Yes. No, it must be news. I haven't heard about that. I don't know.
It is new. Smurfing. What about the smurfing?
All right. Well, if that's true, that's more grounds for possible impeachment. So call your, I talked to Representative Dietrich, she's my representative. I think she's up over the impeachment, but. Yeah, I'm not an expert in election law, but normally you require knowledge. If she knows what's going on, she probably could be held responsible. If she's not, doesn't know what's going on, you can't prove that she knows what's going on, she probably can't. That's generally how the law applies. You require guilty knowledge for a criminal conviction in most cases. I'll read a little bit about American history today. Anybody know what significant event happened like 250 years ago? It would be December of 1773. We're coming up on 250 years of the Declaration, which will be 2026. The Boston Tea Party occurred in December of 1773. I'm not really good at math, but I think that's about 250 years ago coming this December. So as we approach the 250th anniversary of the Declaration being signed in opposition to tyranny, this may be good if you talk to your neighbors as well on the importance of following the Constitution regardless of their political persuasion. Democrats and Republicans alike should be offended by justices who don't follow the Constitution. If I had a conservative justice who was breaking the Constitution, I would not be pleased with that at all. So both sides are capable of it, but this time it happens to be for Democratic justices. Yes.
So if those arguments for corruption coming up were filed against certain Supreme Court justices, would they not have to recuse themselves if their case with the Supreme Court?
Do justices have to recuse themselves? Well, actually, this reminds me of the lies in the media. It says, well, the conservatives were asked to draw rules for recusal like 5 years ago. They didn't do it. Well, they didn't change the rules on the fact that you have to recuse if you have a bias or a personal interest in the outcome of the case. The petition that was filed said we want to give the other justices the power to kick one justice off. So there was a question of how do you do it. So yes, they should recuse, but they won't have the pro se should recuse. You know, when I was a judge, we had a saying, if in doubt, farm it out. If it was a neighbor or somebody my kids knew. I just got off the case. I'm just sending, there's plenty of cases, there's 1,000 more that came from. Give it to some other judge, I'll get some other case back from that judge. You don't even mess with this. You don't want to even appear to have a bias or outside interest in the case. Once in a while, walk into court, like a neighbor said there, oh good, I got you a judgment. Sorry, dude, you should have told me I can't, Instead of your case, you got to have true impartiality and the appearance of impartiality. I would never dream of seeing a case where someone involved in the case gave me $10 million and another $4 million. So this is the sad thing too. I can't come up with anybody that would write a check for $100,000 to file a lawsuit. When impeachment became a serious topic of discussion, the Democrats put $4 million overnight for this anti-impeachment campaign. So it's probably Planned Parenthood money and George Soros money, because I think the presidential election probably comes down to Wisconsin. It's like 3 or 4 states that are really in play, and we're going to be, I think, at ground zero. They don't have to do anything. Under the Constitution, they do. But they are the Constitution. They are the law. They are the King of England. So, yes and no. You should. Any reasonable judge should. Any reasonable person would think that you should. But they don't have to. Because they decide what the law is. That's where the cases end up. And federal courts don't get involved unless it's a federal question. And that's actually under the Constitution. States are sovereign in some areas. Federal government's sovereign in other areas. So federal courts are not always above state courts. The way above state courts are a matter with a federal question, a federal law involved. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Sure.
What I think we're missing a big important point. A, Democrats don't have any respect for citizens. They like power, they're unethical, and they don't necessarily believe in God. And I just don't think they have any ethics. They don't believe in the Constitution.
Well, let's not write them off. I don't know all the Democrats in the state. I don't know many at all, actually. But assume some of them are good people who have good political viewpoints. Maybe we can persuade them. If we had Democrats joining us saying, this is about the Constitution. I mean, you want to build a bridge, I think, because we have the winning logic and facts on our side. So it's really deeper than just which party, I think.
Except the problem is Democrats like their ideology. And when I want to go up that money hole to be a furry, whatever you want to be. But the problem is that the bottom line is that it's the ideology. And as Republicans are concerned, anybody on the right, we tend to try to be respectful of the law, the Constitution, each other. And I just don't see that on the left right now. And people are gonna have to spend a whole lot of time convincing me otherwise, especially after Scarlett Johnson kept giving me all those facts about what they're trying to do to the children. And then
Right, I'm not disagreeing with what I'm saying. If we're going to win, we need to change hearts and minds. So if there are reasonable Democrats who have some traditional values, I think you're better off trying to persuade them to see things your way than saying you're a Democrat, you suck, I'm not talking to you. You're more likely to be effective if you're willing to build a bridge and use logic. And that's my different opinion. Someone argue with it,
I
that's just.
agree with you.
Yeah.
Judge Randall.
There's what? Yeah. Right. Right. Try to be positive, stick with the truth and the law and the facts. I just recommend against using charged political rhetoric to separate us, because that's not going to convert people over. You're going to polarize and push them away. I want to bring them in. Say, I don't, like when I talk, I'm nonpartisan. I mean, I vote Republican, but I don't belong to a party. And I'll talk to anybody who wants to talk about the Constitution. If the Democrats invite me to talk about the Constitution, I go talk about the Constitution. I think we all benefit when our officials follow the Constitution. Do you have a question? That's right. It's a two-volt swing. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Good point. Yes.
matter how many hunters, don't vote the state.
So, yeah, I'm good. Let's get some more questions. I'm good. Okay. Well, you think one more? Okay, one more. Go ahead. Okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Randy.